Okay, we're on. Okay. Okay. So.
Okay.
Sorry guys, we're a little bit late. Technology. So we're here. There's a bit of an echo here. I realise just after I'm beginning to talk here. So a bit of an echo. We're here with Austin Hearne, and on the occasion of what can we call this? A kind of private view. And someone else. Do you want to get in there? So we're here on the occasion of this kind of private view because we're still under regulations, COVID regulations, and I suppose it's a weird sensation in a way because, especially in particular of this exhibition, because it's so experiential. And myself and co-curator Emma Roach just got to view the show today, and it's been a 3-week install, so we haven't been here. So this is the first time we've seen it, about an hour ago, and we were kind of blown away. And I'm not just saying this because Austin's here beside me, but it's an exhibition that you really have to experience. It was something that when I entered the gallery I got all giddy about it, and I was building up expectations over the last 3 weeks because Austin had been sharing some images with us, but they were only little snapshots of corners of the room. We realised that he was doing something with the floor. You can't see this in the image that we're showing here. And he was doing something with the walls and lots of different things going on. But when we entered today, we're kind of, just no words really what he's done. And we knew that, and what we're going to talk about really is about the materials of Austin's practice, but also what's behind the materials, the content, the concept, the politics, religion, all these different things that are behind this exhibition. But first of all, I want to kind of ask Austin, who is Cardinal Raymond? So the title of the show is Love Letters to Cardinal Raymond.
Yeah.
And so there's this character, and there's also another character which is Austin but not Austin. Sorry, we have another person trying to get in. We have a second character that is Austin but not Austin, and he's written these letters around the room, and they're expressing certain things but in quite an adolescent way. So I suppose my first question to Austin, and thanks for doing this, Austin.
Thank you so much.
But who is this character, Cardinal Raymond?
So I suppose obviously my practice is very preoccupied with the Roman Catholic Church, and just through my research I came across Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke a good few years ago actually, and really what kind of piqued my interest in the first place was the costumes he wears. They're like overly flamboyant. I mean, he dresses in the very kind of old kind of traditional way with the very wood grain red silks, that cardinal red, the really intricate laces, 20-meter trains, these capes with trains and stuff. And so he's just a very imposing character. And you ever see, there's loads of videos on YouTube. So that's where I kind of saw him first. But it's just these crazy flamboyant masses, he would say, with all these costume changes. And the big costumes, and so that really got me first. Just visually, he was just like very drag or something to me, and really interested in that side of him first of all. But then when I started to kind of dig into what he was about and his politics and all, I realised that he's a real arch homophobe, and like very arch homophobe. He has links to Steve Bannon and Dignitas Humanae Institute. So and he's very staunch. He's very against like homosexuality, sees it as disordered, intrinsically disordered, against nature, all those kind of things. So I became obsessed kind of just by looking into him then, and I just was, it's just really, he interested me because I saw this kind of dichotomy between these crazy politics and then this very drag presentation, the way he presents himself. So I found it quite, when I'd read about him, it would make me very angry, but I'd be also find it quite funny, so this very, just a real mix of emotions whenever I'd read about him or see about, or come across anything to do with him. I'd want to laugh, but I'd want to also scream as well at the same time. So just, so he's been kind of there in the background of my work for the last while, and I just started writing letters in the last year or so to him, and the first letter was just like, my name is Austin, I've read about you, I know what you're all about, why don't you go and literally go fuck yourself in a way. And and I wouldn't be sending them, I would just scribble them down, it'd be a very visceral kind of act, so then I started, I don't know how this happened, but I started writing kind of like the next letter then was like a love letter to him. And I just I created this character then that I was this very immature gay man who kind of started to fancy him and wanted to kind of run away with him, and I wanted to, they let us progress then, that I wanted to kind of like him to leave the Vatican and come live with me, and because my background as a painter and decorator, I would do up this beautiful apartment for the two of us, and we could canoodle and cuddle and all this kind of stuff. And so that was another kind of letter, and then the last letter is me kind of more saying like, I haven't got any answer from you, and you've basically rejected me, and I'm angry, and you can go and, as far as I'm concerned, go and die, and So it's this very loose, imaginative, thwarted love affair, and I suppose it's a really kind of like roundabout way of just poking fun at him in a way, Because I sort of think as well, maybe, like I've no proof of this, but I think anyone who is that homophobic and who kind of makes it their business to kind of go against homosexuality, like why would you care? I think there's something deeper there. So, so I think that's kind of it in a nutshell, but I suppose it's a way of really poking fun actually, and just and taking the piss and being satirical. And I suppose the letters as well, writing these letters were a way of me sort of generating ideas and just working through ideas really and generating ideas really.
And do you usually enter into these kind of characters to do this work? Do you have to kind of separate yourself in some way, or does it usually Austin that's making the work, or is it
it's a mix of both, I mean, I do put myself into my work, and I perform, and I have performed for the camera a lot of the time. I was like, very sort of not unlike Cindy Sherman in some ways, but I think this was one of the first times where I really threw myself into a character in a way. A lot of the times it would be self-portraits, I was doing self-portraits of myself, or versions of myself, or maybe dressing up as a priest, that kind of thing. But this kind of went, I think this is kind of like a way of just going deeper into that. And, for this show I and in one of the letters I say, I will become you, and I will become better, and, more flamboyant, and just better than you in a way. So, there are pieces in here where I've dressed as him in a very fucked up way, is the only way I can describe it really, it's
You mentioned that you're a painter decorator, and when I met you here about 3 weeks ago, when myself and Emma met you, like you had all these cans of paint,
Yeah.
rollers, wallpaper, all this stuff that you would associate with a painter decorator.
Yeah.
And you would enter this space which had a grey floor, had white walls. We had just had an exhibition, a group exhibition called Meet.
Yeah.
And it was very pretty, and it was what an art gallery is usually. And you kept on saying to us that do you mind if I do this, if I do that? And you really have done this and that in the space, because when I entered here, I was kind of shocked. I just, now, beyond, we were talking about the meaning behind your work and the characters and stuff, but formally, it's kind of, I'm still trying to process what you've done to this gallery space. Now, the viewers here only can see a corner of the room, but it's floor to ceiling. That you've kind of done this, but it's not a mess. It's a kind of very precise mess that you've taken a lot of care. You can get a feeling of it behind me here in this image, where there's these circles and there's this kind of marble effect.
Yeah.
But there's mess and precision in your work, and then there's this kind of, what you would see someone pouring paint onto something quite childishly. And then there's this real kind of painterly quality. So, is this something that has developed here in the 3-week installation, or is this something that you've been developing over a long time?
Yeah, I suppose actually, like my degree was in photography, and there was a gap between my degree in photography and my master's in 2016, and in between that gap I did a bit of photography, obviously, and it was fine art photography, ran my painting and decorating business, the family business, but there was always this continuation of my art practice being photography. But something happened then when I was studying photography. It was the late 90s, so it was still analog, it was all film, it was developing stuff in the dark room with chemicals and the smells of the chemicals, the mess, a lot of kind of accidents could happen, and a lot of, it was just a messy, dirty process, which really kind of made me fall in love with photography in the first place. And then in the noughties, like the digital age really kicked in, and I felt really divorced from the process, because it was like Photoshop, it was computerized, I hated it really, and then cameras were crap as well, and I just felt very frustrated with the medium. But then I went back to do my master's in 2014 and graduated in 2016, and it was, I tried to really develop my photographic, develop it and kind of expand on it and experiment within the photographic medium. And I suppose because I was on the MFA, I tried to keep it really tight. Paint came in from painting and decorating. It did come in and it did feature, but it would be like painting frames or painting boards and then sticking photographs onto them. But it was, most of it was photography. And I suppose afterwards, after the Masters in 2016, when you're presenting yourself and your work to the kind of professional stage, then you're trying to keep everything kind of quite tight to what you did in your Masters. So it was still very much photographic, and I was just frustrated with it because it felt really kind of tight and really restricted. And you take a photograph and you print it, and then you have to decide how do you present it. Is it a frame or what is it? So I started there, like making screens, putting photographs onto painted wallpapers, sticking them to the wood, waxing them, so I would bring these kind of wet processes into a digital prints. Do you know what I mean? So I think in the last year and a half, and definitely over the pandemic, I decided I just need to be happy with what I'm making, and I have to be happy and feel free in the studio. And like, I'd be making these photographic works in the studio, but I'd be off in the corner messing around with paint on the walls, and that wouldn't see the light of the day. It wouldn't like go into works. it would be just a kind of, just somewhere where I could just loosen up and play and feel like I was having a good time, or, you know. And then I'd go back to the serious work of doing photographic stuff, you know. So I think over the pandemic, and definitely, I think before the pandemic, but definitely over the pandemic, I was like, right, I'm going to do what I really, really like, and I'm just going to, you know, and I really like painting. I really like paint. I like the process. I like the mess. I like getting messy. I like the smell, you know, and it's very akin to the chemicals of the analog age of photography. So it's kind of like getting back to that in a way, I see. And there's, you know, and it has the kind of, it's open to mistakes, and it's open to just stuff going wrong, you know, and you can have a certain amount of control over it, but then I like to kind of relinquish control with things. Like some of these wallpapers here, you know, I would pour paint on the paper and let them kind of dry, or leave them out in the rain outside, and I would come back the next day and I wouldn't know what I'm going to find in a way. So that was, yeah, so I kind of feel like I want to get to a place where whatever I'm making, I'm free, and I feel like happy doing it.
It's shocking here, the precision though. It's very hard to explain it in that it feels like everything is masked off. That you've inhabited every edge of the gallery, and all that's framing it is the doors, the radiators, and the windows, and or you know, so everything else has been populated with this stuff, like every inch, you know. There's a little alcove above the doorway, and you've got that as well. So it's right up to the edge, and when you come in here, and the floor as well is in a kind of quadrant, that you've divided the floor into four, this large space here, and it's kind of like a crucifix actually in the center.
Actually, never thought of that. Like a cross.
But it's kind of very precise. And then when you step on the floor, you feel that, well, is it going to be tacky? But it feels like it's been printed on in some way. That you somehow have put this ingredient together that it's like it's silk screened onto the space, you know. It's kind of like the skin on it. It's not that thing where you've been messing about for 3 weeks. There's a real precision and deftness to touch, and all this kind of stuff that is quite overwhelming when you come into the space, because even at the corner of the wall here, there's a pool of paint, but it's all masked off. Everything is kind of perfect, and so you're caught between this thing that you've walked into, perhaps some kind of inside of the painting of a church, you know, kind of a representation of a church, but it's artificial, and then you have these wall works spread out all over the space, and you have a screen here, so it's quite overwhelming when you come in, and just the work ethic. And I was thinking about this, myself and Emma were talking about this, that you would contact us, you were here for 3 weeks, and you would contact us around 9 o'clock in the morning, and you say, oh, something was wrong with the light switch or something like that. But you were working here day in, day out. It was kind of a job. You entered in the space as a job. And there is that in the work as well. There's kind of a work ethic behind it, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I quite like hard work, you know, and I like physical work, and I like that kind of roller coaster ride of pleasure and pain, and it's kind of it's in me anyway, because I ran my business for years, you know, and it was a painting and decorating business, and you couldn't mess around, you know. You had to get in and start at 8 o'clock, and it had to be finished, you know. You were from 8 to 4:30, and like I ran the business, so I had deadlines and I had pressures, so I was used to working like that. I mean, it was pretty hellish at times. It was because it was relentless. It was 5-6 days a week, and I haven't been doing that for the last number of years, which has been brilliant. Like I wound up my business to concentrate on my practice, and you know, the only time I work like that now is when I have a show, and they're few and far between. Unfortunately, I would love to be doing more shows, but this was just. Like, I had the keys for this place. You were so generous. You gave me the keys, the alarm codes, and I had this massive space, and I could do what I wanted with it. So I wasn't going to waste a minute. Like I was here 5-6 days a week as well, and I was here at like 7:30, 8 o'clock some mornings, and I just worked and worked and worked, and it was just a joy, you know. It was actually a joy to have the space to actually spread out, because when I'm in my small studio in Dublin, you know, it's very frustrating. I can't really spread out, and I can't really go kind of wild, because it's so small that if I do go wild, I'm going to splash, and I'm going to, you know, affect the work that's finished or whatever. So, no, I do like that kind of, I do like getting stuck in, and I like physical work. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, like there's another thing as well. There's this space has 3 rooms, one large room, 2 back rooms, and you've done different things within the rooms. They're all floor to ceiling, they're packed, but there's a process room in the back, and you have all your empty paint cans and all that kind of stuff. But what is very funny is there's a tap, there's a sink.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and it goes back to this thing that I was talking about, the doors framing the work. And it's like the sink is, you've cleaned off the sink, you've painted the sink, you've made that. I was coming in today and I was expecting the sink to be in a mess, like clogged with paint, wallpaper, whatever. But it's perfectly clean, and then all around the sink is mess.
Yeah.
So there's these choices, these intentional choices that you've made within the work, which are kind of funny. They're kind of humorous, but kind of shocking as well, because there's a real direction in the work. There's a real kind of thing that you actually see your own work, which is odd. I know you've been felt out here for the last few weeks and making this work and stuff like that, because you've had 3 weeks to install. But there is a real feeling that you're looking down on the work. Forget the pun, but you're looking down on the work, and you know, you see it.
Yeah. I mean, and that only happened in the last few days, really, because it was mental here for like the 3 weeks, especially the first 2 weeks, and it was like, it was overwhelming at times, because there was so much going on, and I had so much work to do, and at one point I was like, I set myself too much here, and there was a point where I was like, I kind of regret, you know, going so far, you know. But I mean, I don't regret it for a second now. But there was this, what day is today, Thursday, there was like Tuesday, Wednesday, where I was like able to kind of really step back and sort of tidy it up and start emptying stuff out and start leaving in the space what needed to be here. And the sink then was a mess, and like the sink is a stainless steel sink, and there's a kind of carpentry made bottom, what would you say, pedestal for whatever, and that was messed up from the students as well a bit, and the sink was messed up, and then I had messed it up even more, and the walls around it are all messed, splashed with paint and stuff. I just thought it would be a really good contrast to have this shine. Like I bleached and scrubbed that sink, and the base of the wood I painted with a couple of coats of white, so it really stuck out against all the mess around. And it's probably something you would see in the likes of religious buildings like convents and stuff, where the wall, you know, the walls might not be in a great shape, but the sink and the tile floors would be scrubbed within an inch of their life. So there's something there as well, you know.
Like you mentioned there, that your reference point is other religious buildings. You do travel around to different buildings to get influence. And so tell us about that, just those field trips out into the world, and really not just going to Google Image and picking out, you know, as we all did in art school, but you actually go to the buildings and you... like currently, like it's a mad obsession with churches and church buildings and graveyards, and it's a day, and it's a daily thing as well. It's like my husband he just rolls his eyes constantly. Like if we're away on holidays or if we're anywhere, he just follows me now. He's just like, I just give up, you know. So I kind of can't pass
a church in whatever town or village I'm in, and even if I've been in a church like in Dublin, in town where I live, I'd be popping into them every day if I'm walking past them. So yeah, it is a daily thing, and it's really interesting. I just love the spaces. I think they're very, very powerful spaces, and I think really what's really interesting about them as well is it's rare in a city or town or village where people on the street can just walk into these empty, and a lot of the time they're empty and the doors are open. Very rarely the security, you just walk into these cavernous, amazing spaces, and there's trust there as well. So it's, I think they are one of the few spaces, they're probably the only spaces in the city, or that you can just walk into and kind of sit and contemplate. So I like all that, and I would feel contemplative in a church when I'm there, and I would light candles for my parents who are dead, my niece who's dead, and I would remember, and I do think, and I do go in and take the piss as well, but I'm respectful of, I would be respectful of other people who are in there, and and I feel that this is their space and this is their time to do whatever they feel is necessary to do there, and they're powerful. They're powerful spaces. They have a powerful aura about them, powerful feeling. They look like, as a creative visual person, there's always something to see and look at, and I feel small in them, and they were built to make us feel small, which is, and I do feel small in them, and I think that's the part of the idea of them, is to make you feel small and to make you feel maybe insignificant, or there's so much I could say about church buildings, but it is a daily part of my life really, and I do, and a day or another place where ideas are really generated, because within them, there is marble, which I'm obsessed by. There's beautiful marbles, wood, stained glass, the way the light goes around them, the coloured light coming in through the stained glass. Printed matter is a big thing in a church. You get all these mental Catholic publications like Alive magazine, the Irish Catholic, God's Cottage is another one. They're just gold mines for ideas, and I would go in and take them from the churches. I'm quite proud in that I do steal them and I don't pay for them. If I had 5 cents, I'd put it in so there's a little clink, but they are also a huge source of inspiration actually as well. So I would always get something out of going into a church, some kind of, there's contemplation, but I also kind of feel quite giddy in a church as well. Like you said, and that's really interesting actually, that yourself and Emma said you came in here and you felt kind of giddy. That's really interesting. Maybe, and I suppose I was going for that, and I always feel quite giddy in a church and giddy leaving, because I always feel like I'm not supposed to be there because I'm a queer gay person, so I feel like I'm not welcome, and it's sort of so maybe I feel, I don't know what that is all about.
It's kind of rebellion.
A bit.
It's weird. It's just that this is glorious. And that's a really strange word to use, because
you said this was
because it's a descriptor I'd never use for an art exhibition, and I feel that you said you feel small in church spaces and stuff, and I do actually feel small in here, and you kind of regress if you grew up in a kind of surrounded by religion. I went to church every Sunday and schools around the pews and did all that kind of stuff, and didn't really pay attention, but it was always there because you went in weekly. But there was a giddiness about it, and not to laugh. You're not meant to laugh. You're meant to be reserved. There's a.
You're not supposed to be happy in them, are you?
No. You have to be. To show an element of respect and all those things. So when you come in here, you do feel that it brings you back there. And maybe that's the giddiness that
That's great you're saying that though.
Yeah, like it's really hard to pick out bits and pieces in this show because there's a large screen over here as well that blocks out half of the space. And there's wall works on top of the wallpaper, and there's letters. The letters are very important, and we've actually printed out letters for the viewers when they come in, that they can take a letter away.
Yeah.
So there's all this stuff going on in the work. What other question? I have so many questions that I kind of, it's hard to kind of pull one out. Like, I'm wondering, there's a conflict here in that you find these spaces beautiful, the church spaces, and then you spoke earlier about the agents within those spaces, cardinals, priests, all that kind of stuff, and the emotion that you feel there in terms of, anger. So there's this kind of serenity and there's kind of an anger. There's this a mixed boat of a mixed bag of emotions playing out in the work. Can you talk a little bit about this mixed?
I think that's really an interesting place to start making work from, isn't it? Because it's not just one emotion. There's this clash, So I've got all this clash of stuff to work with, which is brilliant, and it's. You've got the beauty of the church, you've got the beauty of the culture, even like Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke's costumes, they're crazy gorgeous though. They are amazing and they're very couture and they're, I'm very interested in fashion as well. And so, like the costumes, the interior design, all that stuff is so interesting and so beautiful. And ugly, and it skirts that kind of line of ugliness and beauty. You could probably talk about that more. And sometimes I like something that's so ugly, it's kind of beautiful. So there's all that to play around with. But then there's the politics, which is ugly and horrible and disgusting, and against women and against gay people, trans people, against sex outside marriage, all these things, contraception, AIDS. I mean, it's actually upsetting sometimes to really, to think about all that. And I felt really bashed by the Catholic Church as a child growing up, like as a kind of, when I was turned 12, 13, and you start feeling your sexual urges and your orientation starting to kind of rise to the surface. I felt back then, and it really always stuck with me, I felt like, because as a child you're kind of a bit naive and you're like, the Catholic Church and the priests and nuns in school, they're all about love and acceptance and all this kind of thing. And then all of a sudden I had these very strong urges and desires that it was like, that I can't control, and that they're being funneled in a direction, but it's wrong. And, and at the same time you're like, this is in the 80s, 90s, you're seeing all the child sexual abuse stuff starting to come out, and you're starting to, you really start then as a teenager starting to really realise how hypocritical it all is. And naively, as a kind of teenager, I was like, this is the last generation, this is all going to die out now, and all this hypocrisy and all this horrific kind of stuff would kind of die out, and people are going to cop on, and it's going to, but I don't think it has. It has to an extent kind of died off, but I feel the Catholic Church is kind of, the numbers are dwindling, but I feel it's kind of concentrating into a kind of newer, uglier, I've said this before, kind of newer, uglier, less tolerant kind of form. So the people who are hanging on are going to be more OTT, kind of like the evangelicism in the USA. But I suppose, to go back to the point that, it's a delicious place to be working from, as an artist, there's this politics that's alive, and it's there, and it's in the news all the time, the politics of the Catholic Church. It's an ongoing story, horrible and all as it is, funny sometimes it is as well, and then you've got the culture, which is beautiful and ugly. So it's kind of bringing all that together, and I suppose it's great. I feel really grateful that that's where my interests lie, because there's no end of material really, and I think, it feels like that. So yeah.
It's got me to just you talking about politics and then materials. It's got me really to rethink art in general, because artists go out and make art, and sometimes it's about art. It's art about art, and the way you do things on a canvas or in a sculpture is based on that history, and sometimes that's limited, and then there's the philosophy of politics, which is a way of saying that art is political, but there's something about your work, the message behind it, the intent, this emotion, this rage, this beauty, all these things spiraling around behind it, and then you end up with something that could be a painting. It could be, if you detach this from all that content. But if you just present that as a canvas, people will be pleased to come in and see it as an artwork about art.
Yeah.
But it's coming from a different place, and that's really fascinating, because really, I don't want to say anything cruel about art that doesn't have politics behind it, or doesn't have that thing, that obsession.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like what John Baldessari, the late John Baldessari, said about art. He said, or being an artist, he said something like, talent is cheap, but obsession, you can't will obsession as an artist. If you have it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he I suppose he was saying this idea of talent, and the thing within the artist, the talent, the natural artist, all that stuff is really cheap, that you need a will and an obsession to kind of keep this thing going.
A driver.
Behind it. I mean, you can't just paint things or whatever, carve things just for the sake of it. There has to be some kind of something behind it, whatever that is. But you seem to, as you say, you found this thing, this engine that kind of is underneath this thing.
Yeah.
But the results are kind of shocking in that. In this exhibition, you've really gone all out, I think, within every corner, every crevice, every little bit. And it's not just one show, but there's a few different shows going on. The process room, there's a table inside with other stuff in it, and there's this very theatrical space in there.
What I was going to say there. Well, I mean, this was an opportunity like that. It doesn't happen, and the artists don't really get, and I feel really fortunate, because I suppose, shows are few and far between anyway at the best of times, and then, if you are lucky enough to get a show, you have to have a concept, you have to have materials, you have to have it all listed down, and you have to kind of be very definite about what you're going to present, really, don't you, in most cases. Whereas this, I was making stuff, and I had making stuff before, the show, before I knew the show was going to happen, and then there was this gap then where I was like, I don't know what, I'm going to do something with the walls, I'm going to do something with the floors. I had a loose idea, but I didn't really know how extensive it was going to be till I came down and saw the space and felt the space and all, and then I just went for it, And
could you do this in a more centrally located space? Because we're in Gorey here, we're outside, we're on the periphery, this periphery space.
Yeah.
Would you feel confident you could do this in another space?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The thing about this, actually, some of the papers that because there's a big, at the back here, there's a big green like small incline, and I was using that as well, so I was using that to make papers out there. I had this idea that I was making like marble type papers, wallpapers, and I had I developed a way to do that, and actually I had a two-person show at An Answer in the complex. I was invited by Paul and Mark there last September. So I started kind of preparing for this show then, and I started making kind of marble papers in my studio. And I kind of had developed a bit of a way of doing that at that time. So I kind of thought I knew how to do it when I came down here. But that space outside here, that kind of incline hill, it's like, I was like, oh, I can just spread everything out there and do it there, you know. But that space then made these papers a lot different because they were on outside. I was, you know, pour paint and I'd paint the papers and it would start pooling in the papers. The sun would come down and dry it really quick, or else the sun would start drying it and then it would start raining and then it would dilute the paint, and all this magic, absolute magic stuff happened here. Like, that wouldn't have happened and didn't come even close to it in the studio because I could only make certain small quantities at a time. So this, yeah, having the space has been absolutely magical for all that, you know. But you know, and I suppose your question is, if I was to plan to do something like this in another space, I'm sure it would be different, but it would, you know, be similar. And maybe it would develop, and maybe it'd be a different version. Who knows whether it'd be better or worse? Because these were all this paper was made here and cut here and applied to the walls here. So, yeah.
We'll ask, I suppose we'll ask the viewers, like, if you want some questions, ask some questions. But one last thing I suppose I want to ask is that it is quite a contentious subject you're dealing with in this location, I suppose, in Gorey. Like, how do you feel about, you know, people coming in here and perhaps not feeling the same things that myself and Emma felt coming in here, but feeling something else, feeling something that, you know, maybe they are still part of the church, or they still feel a certain thing about it that is a little bit different. How do you feel about that? Because it is a political work, and it's beautifully done, it's formal, it's all those things that you want an art exhibition to be, but it is asking questions. It is kind of, it's quite antagonistic in a way, you know, even though their characters are their real characters, and then there's a kind of a fake character who's writing these letters, but it's you and not you. So there's all this stuff going on that people are going to look at in a different way.
Yeah.
I suspect.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there'll be people coming here who would be offended. But equally, I'm offended. You know, I've been very offended, and I continue to be. But that's just the difference, isn't it? That's just life, I suppose, is it? I mean, is that just too simple to say? But I mean, I don't make apologies for it. I don't make apologies for what I do or what I say. You know, within my art practice, I respect someone's beliefs, someone's religious beliefs. And I wouldn't try and change anyone's mind. I'm not in, you know, that's not where I'm at. I'm not trying to change people's minds. I'm not trying to, you know, take them over to the dark side or anything. So, yeah, I'm sure there would be people that would feel offended, but like, I'm offended constantly as well, you know, and that's fine. You know, I'm not trying to, yeah. Have you any like thrown that? I don't know.
Yeah, no, but listen, it's like I suppose what myself and Emma feel about this show is that we were anxious about it. We were anxious about not just what you were doing in space. We were like, oh my God.
What if there is a bit of...
No, but what you're going to do with the space, the wallpaper, there's a bit of cleanup going to happen.
Yeah.
That's first of all. But then it's the subject as well. You're in a space that's close to certain sites that have been up in the news in terms of religion and sexual misconduct and all that kind of stuff that's swirling around this space. That we were anxious about, but we were like so excited about it. And I think I think art should have permission to do this in a way, to put this out there. And more artists should be doing this type of work that has it doesn't have to be about religion, but it has a kind of a thing behind it, an engine behind it, a drive that is asking questions.
Absolutely, yeah. And there should be space for all like views and all viewpoints. I mean, I would love to see art from people who are, you know, really religious and really love Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke and like really put him on a pedestal and are obsessed in a very positive way about him. I'd love to see that, and I'd love to see art from more viewpoints, from every viewpoint, and it's all there, but it doesn't happen really, does it? It's all from, we're kind of, artists are nearly all the kind of same tribe in a way.
On the left,
Yeah, they are really. So I would nearly welcome right-wing stuff. It's not like I wouldn't curate it or I wouldn't encourage it, but I mean, it's like, why not, And I don't think stuff like should be silenced. I don't think someone who doesn't like my work should silence my viewpoint or my, my views or, my satirization of Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke, So, yeah, I think it should. Art is about life, isn't it? It's about all aspects of life, and it's about humans making art, and we're all totally different. So, I mean, yeah, bring it on, I think.
Okay, I'm just going to ask, does anyone have any questions? There's no questions, yeah? Okay. No. Anyone have any questions? I suppose we leave it open for questions. Thanks for staying, everyone who joined.
I'm just wondering about, we're talking about reaction of maybe locals and people that read the show. Do you ever get reactions on social media from your kind of direct reaction?
No, I actually haven't. No, I haven't actually. I'm always kind of waiting for it though, I would always, I'm expecting something someday. I am.
Or is it kind of a culture of silence, or it's kind of...
I don't know, I hope people don't think I would be silencing their,
No, people do their everything.
I don't know what it is. I've never got anything. I have never. But then some people have said to me before about my, because I use Instagram and I have used it for years and it's been a great platform. I have had a few people say to me, and younger people, that they thought I was a religious zealot. Because, all my work isn't very didactic. It's not like, there are elements and there's tempos to my work. Sometimes it is very angry and, but it's nuanced as well. So that's the only thing I've ever got, the confusion that they think I am, a very practicing Catholic, and they didn't get the nuance in it. That's it. But I've never had anything like that. I kind of would like it, I think. In a safe kind of way. Just a gentle kind of little protest outside here or outside my house or something, I don't know.
I don't think we have any questions. I suppose the last thing I want to say is I just hope people come to see this thing, because for someone who goes to a lot of galleries and sees shows, it's very rare that I walk into a space that I get giddy.
That's
and
nice.
I kind of, it feels in here that you're not controlling the artwork, or it's not that it's curated. It is curated by the artist, but it feels just like a big splash. And that because there's no white walls, all we have is white on the ceiling. There's nothing there for the viewer to kind of feel comfortable. To have space, the white gallery space, to kind of have a moment where you can kind of take a breather and then go to the next work and kind of pull it into your view. There's no moment in this space. It's actually, I've been here for an hour and I'm starting to see details only now. So it's like one big painting that you walk into.
It really smacks you in the face. I really wanted that. I really wanted that. I like being smacked in the face myself. In artwork or films or something. I really, and I like subtle, obviously I like subtle, quiet minimalist stuff, but I just want to make something really in your face. And I don't know if this is part of the pandemic and the frustration of being in those pandemic times and being locked up and stuff, and you know, being very restricted, that I just wanted to kind of go kind of wild, you know, and I really wanted to, felt like a caged beast being out of the cage, you know, and I just really want to, this is the first big project in a way. So yeah.
There's people.
Yeah.
People are looking into the window there. Last question. I think we're gonna sign off.
Yeah, great. Is there a question there?
Looking forward to seeing the work, Austin.
Thank you, Susan.
So yeah, like I suppose the last thing we should do, because this is going to be, we're trying to record this, that's why we turned out okay. But the show is on from Wednesday to Saturday. It's open from 11 till 3 every day, and it's on for a month up until mid-August. So I just hope you can make it. And just even send messages on Instagram and or that you're on when you're here on your visit or whatever, you know, and just to get people, because it is a very difficult space for people to come to, in terms of it's outside of Dublin. Well,
it's an hour from Dublin, and you know, you could come down and spend the day at the beach while you're here.
Yeah. After being traumatized.
But it's, I mean, it is. I mean, I would urge people to come as well. I mean, it is very Instagrammable, you know. I mean, I'm very aware of that. It is very Instagrammable, but there is an atmosphere that I would love people to come down and experience.
And the echo all of a sudden here is very apparent when it hasn't been before. I think that's the church thing, isn't it? It's kind of like,
it's quite cool as well, even though it's a hot day.
Yeah. It's the marble, it's all.
Yeah, it's mad.
Psychological, So.
But I really want to thank James and Emma and Paul Carter for just being so encouraging, and for just giving me the space, giving me the keys, giving me the, you know, the space to do this, and like just the free range to do whatever. So that has been so good, and it really wouldn't have happened without all that. You know, wouldn't have happened on this scale. It probably would have been just works on a white wall or something. So I'm really grateful, and I want to thank you so much for that.
Pleasure. Okay, thanks everyone for joining, and we, that's it.
Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.